After decades of being perpetually sick atop of the lighthouse, let's take a look at an alternate reality where Amphy gets a sip of that good stuff, that secret potion early, and let's see how Ampharos does in a Pokemon Crystal solo challenge. Now I'm going to start touching on the important little beats here that sets up the Pokemon rather than doing a 5-minute monologue on things that don't matter. But up at the very top of the list, I have to mention here, it's in the medium slow level up group. It's fantastic, and generally it was reserved for like starters or trade evolutions in Gen 1, so it's very welcome to level up incredibly fast, but as we transition into the stats, we can see that it'll be the only thing that's fast today. Game Freak strikes again by chopping down my excitement by giving this thing 55 base speed, which already kind of foreshadows problems on red, but don't hit the panic button just yet. The only other thing that's pretty great here is 115 special attack. Now it's good, don't get me wrong, but I think it's a little bit off from being able just to one-shot everything in the game in some key moments, but that's a little bit of a nitpick. I think the stats are pretty good as a whole. The level up learn set, not really my favorite, but at least they have the decency here to start this thing off with a stab move and thunder shock. That's going to carry us for quite a bit, and I would say the rest here is pretty inconsequential. Now the TM list is nice mainly because of those elemental punches, but somebody please tell me why it doesn't learn Ice Punch. Who decides who learns what kind of punch? Why can this thing punch with the fury of fire but can't manage to throw a little ice in with it, but something like Abra can? I think it's complete nonsense. It's exactly what I expect from Gen 2, and I'll save you on that tangent for now, but this thing does learn pretty much everything that it needs to have a solid run. And I'm going to level with you guys. Ampharos has an extremely minimal and clear path through the first 2 gyms, and I don't even really need to go into that much depth. In fact, I'm going to praise Ampharos a lot here during the first half of the video because it very well might be the best early and mid game that we've ever seen in Crystal up to this point. And it was such a delight to do runs with, but first, I'm going to slow it down. Let's talk about the tutorial rival. And this is going to let me talk about Thunder Wave. Now on paper, having low speed and you have a move that reduces the opponent's speed by 75% while giving them a flat 25% chance just to skip their turn outright, and on top of that it has 100% accuracy, it seems solid, and I tried my best to use it a lot. I thought it was going to be really important, but with high special, battles just don't last long enough to make it that efficient. Now this is the one battle in the entire game that I'm going to use it in because this battle takes longer than 3 turns. That's pretty much the barometer here. Now you're going to see here I get really lucky with crits. I crit a lot, the most I've ever seen in Crystal, but normally this takes like 5 or 6 tackles under perfect conditions, and when you got things like Growl on the table, I would go ahead and say that this is possibly a top 5 worst battle in the run, which is pretty crazy to say, but I really did want to touch on Thunder Wave for a second. The only other thing here to really mention as I make my way through Crystal all these times, I don't remember many Pokemon as resilient as Ampharos is in the early game. I'm not going to heal here, and in fact, I don't even need to really heal until I get to Goldenrod if you just want an idea of how top tier Ampharos' early game is. But let's just go ahead and take a look at Falkner. I'm an electric type and you'd figure I would do really well here, and I do. You can see I immediately one-shot the Pidgey to move on, and Falkner's just this really weird gym leader because he has Mud Shot, and since this is only a speed tie here on the Pidgeotto, I guess there is a reality where maybe you get Mud Slap, you lose accuracy, and you just never recover, but I never really had a problem during this fight. And just remember guys, a super effective Mud Shot is still really weak. It's barely better than a non-stab tackle in terms of damage, so I get through this one pretty easy. Now I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to tell you a story about my introduction to Ampharos. Back in the day when Pokemania was running wild, brother, and Pokemon Red and Blue were still the only main games out, Gold and Silver was releasing in Japan, and through magazines and whatnot you would start to see some new things pop up. Since the internet wasn't really a thing, me and my friends would go to a place called the Galleria, which is essentially like a super mall, and we would buy Japanese card packs because they had the new Neo Genesis card packs before the games even came out over here. And my first 2 holographic cards were Jumpluff and Ampharos, but remember, they didn't even have English names yet, but I absolutely love the look of Ampharos considering that I'm kind of a fiend for the color yellow, it's my favorite, but Jumpluff, not so much. Now when the game's eventually released in 2000, I ended up not really featuring Ampharos on my casual playthrough outside of just kind of collecting it. And what I love about these solo challenges, I'll say it to the end of time, is that I can finally get to take this Pokemon, go start to finish, and get a really good feel for how this Pokemon plays. And I don't think I've been this excited to play Crystal for quite a while, and truth be told, I haven't done a Crystal video in like 6 months. I got a little bit discouraged, the views weren't great, that has nothing to do with anything, that's neither here nor there, let's move on. And I promise we're not going to insert any more stories into the video. Union Cave is going to have the only optional content for the vast majority of the game, and I'm going to fight Pokemaniac Larry. He has a single Slowpoke, he gives the perfect amount of experience, and I can go ahead and I can pick up Swift, which is also important, but pretty much everything else here is standard up to Bugsy, and we can just talk about it. Now you already know Kakuna and Metapod don't really matter, and this is another area where you might think that Thunder Wave is pretty solid because Scyther outspeeds you. If it starts to set up Fury Cutter, it skipping a turn will just reset the counter, but it's a waste of time. Just to touch on it one last time, it's overall just to go straight Thunder Shock. It's only a 2-shot here, there's not really any risk, and we can just move on just like that. Rival 2 was also a pretty rough fight, and it's not really surprising since even the tutorial battle was a little long, but here you're going to have like a 25% chance to take out the Ghastly. It's pretty inconsequential, and that Larry battle will let me hit level 18 after that, and in combination with Swift, you can actually manage the Bayleaf pretty well. And here I'm going to get the best case scenario, it just goes for straight damage. I guess you could lose if it just crits a bunch, but remember this thing has Growl, it has Reflect, it can poison you, and if you're just stuck here with like Thunder Shock or Tackle, it can take forever. It can give Bayleaf a ton of turns to whittle you down, but I do think it's pretty cool overall that the first 2 rival battles end up being some of the more harder challenges in the game. After the battle, we're going to get to some new tech. Now, in fact, this run had me diving pretty deep into my toolbox to get every little advantage that I could, and feel free to use this one if you're ever in a similar situation. In Ilex Forest, I'm going to do the usual thing. I'm going to chase the Farfetch'd around, but when I get cut, I'm going to use an escape rope. I'm going to grab the free charcoal, pretty much because it just sells for a ton of money, then I'm going to continue on the path like normal. Now, I'll finish this thought in a minute, but I do have to mention that I'm not going to pick up Headbutt in this run. Ampharos has extremely little use for physical moves, and it's just a big waste of time, but back to that new tech. When you got a Pokemon that wants to get multiple punches, multiple TMs this early, and you don't want to tank your time by just battling a bunch of trainers to get money, the infusion of getting that charcoal to sell is going to allow me to pick up Thunder Punch and Fire Punch easily. Now, in fact, you get so much money from the charcoal that I can afford an extra Fire Punch TM for way later in the game, but it goes without saying that I think this might be the biggest power spike in the game that we've ever seen. I know Feraligatr gets Ice Punch, and then he gets Surf when you get to Ekritique, but Feraligatr doesn't have the special attack like Ampharos does. And while this power spike is extremely strong, I think it puts Ampharos on another level. It's also necessary. Even on little early fights here, getting the underground against Super Nerd Teru, Fire Punch comes in clutch. It's insanely useful for a ton of battles in the game, but this is just kind of like the very first part where that electric fire coverage leaves very little battles where you feel helpless. And we don't have to talk about all the goldenrod errands today, the bike, Abra, getting Kenya, talking to Squirt Bottle Girl. Let's just go straight to Whitney. Let's break down a very complex and intricate fight here and pay close attention because it could get a little complicated. I'm going to go straight Thunder Punch. That's it. And once again, I don't outspeed the ace Miltank here. It's annoying, but you still don't want to use Thunder Wave. I can just 2-shot it, and in no world will it ever match your level of damage output. And just like that, Amphi takes that 3rd badge. As is tradition, it's time to look at the first split data of the run, and I promise I wasn't just blowing smoke because this Pokemon is lightning fast. Remember, Furret is our current champion, and also remember that Furret isn't the world's best Pokemon for the Johto section, especially early, and it did most of its heavy lifting in the Kanto section, but for now, Ampharos has established a 4-minute and 37-second lead, and the most interesting thing for me to see during the process of doing these runs is if Ampharos could possibly keep up this level of just flattening the game with that fresh power spike. I'm not sure if it's ever going to slow down, but we'll have to see. Before we progress more plot points, I'm going to pick up the magnet here, and I know no one is wondering this, but yes, you do have to load in Ecritique to get the day to change from Sunday the way I got it coded. I want to get Sunny to spawn, and I was working on several coding things for this run before the video came out, and this is just one of those little inner working things I discovered. If you're going from like Route 36 to 37, it will not load in the NPC. Instead, you need certain map changes like a full-on city to load in before you go back before you can load. But the magnet overall is paramount to this run, and I actually forget to put it on for a few minutes, so when it finally gets put on, I want you guys to tell me what you think about it on the overlay. Pay close attention to it when I finally remember to put it on. For Rival 3, I still don't have the magnet, but it doesn't matter. Haunter is going to outspeed, it uses Curse, and it's going to be a one-shot no matter what. And from there, I have Fire Punch for Magnemite, Bayleaf can't survive one, I take a little bit of damage, and I don't think anyone in the entire world ever thought Zubat was going to stand a chance, but it feels good to have the Rival no longer be a threat as hard as he was early in the video. We don't have to focus on him anymore, and this is the last time you'll see the Rival in this video. Going straight into Morty, and this is a fight you kind of just get through it. There's no real strategy. I don't want to waste my time to get a Mint Berry, and since Gengar will ultimately outspeed me and get a couple of turns for Hypnosis, this one essentially just comes down to a roll of the dice. I do have the magnet on here. Just look at it. What do you think about it? It guarantees everything is an easy one-shot except for the Gengar, and I end up just seeing Hypnosis miss a couple of times, and I get through it. For my money, this is kind of like the first indication that Ampharos has some flaws. The poor speed means that you will get outsped very often during the course of a full run, and while 115 special is really good, it's just not quite enough to one-shot everything, and in just this little nibble, this little morsel, we've seen it kind of take place. There's more to come, but for now, it hasn't costed us anything. We're still cruising, and I probably should say swimming, because now we're taking a brisk swim down to Cyanwood, and after picking up some medicine for that beta Ampharos poser in the lighthouse, it's time for Chuck, brother. This fight is simultaneously very easy or infuriating depending on if you have bad luck. Now you can just Thunder Punch until you get the badge, but since Primeape outspeeds you, it gets a couple of turns, leers into some damage. It's usually not too bad, but on the Poliwrath, he will survive a hit pretty often, and if you get hit with like a leer, and then you get hit with a dynamic punch, maybe you get confused, you can lose this battle, but we see something pretty clean here actually. But I would say overall this is pretty similar to the Morty fight. Not really the most comfortable thing ever, but we do get through it. From there I get Hidden Power, which is ice for the run. I forgot to put it on the overlay, but it's ice. And then I Thunder Punch at Gyarados with 495 of effective power. Oh boy, pretty much electrified every Pokemon in the Lake of Rage, but I think you guys know what time it is now. As usual, the hideout isn't really worth going into too much detail on, but you know the drill. I think if it wasn't for the Wilhelm scream that I just can't help myself from doing, I wouldn't even edit this part in, but let's just jump to Pryce. You know guys, sometimes I think about a Piloswine run and how the typing is really unique and how it could be kind of cool, but then I think about this fight. I've literally never seen this thing do anything good, even when it has super effective damage, and I guess there's a reason why they made Mamoswine later in the generations, but all of that is pretty much to say that this fight, it goes on a few extra turns, but there's not really anything to talk about. After giving that secret potion to our sickly little brother, it's time for the 7th gym, and here, even if you didn't have Fire Punch, it's still not that bad of a battle. There were some routing things where I didn't have Fire Punch yet. Like sure, there's some paralysis chances and whatever little chip damage the Magnemites might do, but you resist steel moves, you do neutral damage with ice, you got that big special attack, and this one is just kind of like a bump in the road, especially if you have Fire Punch like you see here. But now, let's stop talking about this. Let's get to the really important part of a Crystal run. Guys, I hate to say it, it's that time of the video where only we can put a stop to that menacing, that blasted Team Rocket, and we get the phone call telling us to go to Goldenrod, and there's really, I think there's only so many ways for me to say it. Team Rocket with their little level 13 Rattatas and 47 different coughings, they're just little one-shots, and just like the hideout, we really don't need to linger on this section too long. I think it's time to go over a few things that I had to do to get Ampharos over the hump for this run. Vitamins are extremely important to this run to hit ranges and breakpoints during the remaining tough fights, and here it's going to boil down to 5 calciums and 3 proteins. Now the proteins at first glance seem a little bit weird because I've barely used physical moves at all, but you have to trust me here. And I'm also going to pick up Return, and I love that Return is barely relevant for this run at all. You just don't see that very often. Next up is Ice Cave, and what I want to focus on here is there's a hidden Carbos that I'm going to pick up. It's a little bit out of the way in the bottom left of the drop down section, and like I said earlier, every vitamin has a purpose in this run. There's also a protein, it's out in the open, we've seen it before, I don't have to show it. For Clair, I have Hidden Power Ice, you already know it does the job. Thunder Punch is the play for Kingdra, and let me try to fit in some other thoughts right here real quick. Now you might notice here, hey, why do you still have Growl on the learn set? And the truth is that Ampharos just uses 3 moves for 99% of the game. Now Light Screen was something that I could have learned, and it was part of my original strategy, but Growl is basically just there because I don't need a 4th move. That's the long and short of it. If you'd noticed it, I just wanted to say why. In the Dragon's Den, there's another calcium that I never pick up normally, but I'm gonna need it for this run, and from there, this is where Ampharos starts to sink a little bit of time, because up to this point, it's been bare minimum and it's just blistering through the game. I'm gonna pick up the 2 rare candies from Mount Mortar, and then I'm gonna go inside of the Whirl Islands, get that one too, and finally, I'm gonna dip into the Slowpoke well, and I'm gonna pick up the TM for Rain Dance later. And now it's time for the one part of the game where I'm gonna do a pretty good bit of extra training. There's several battles to look at. I'm gonna fight Cool Trainer Blake, Psychic Gilbert, there's Cool Trainer Arena, those are on Route 27, and when I get to Route 26, I'm gonna battle Fisher Scott, and there's 2 Cool Trainers close to Victory Road, Gavin and Jake. Now this is gonna give me some very crucial levels as I make my way towards the league, and I wanna look at split data at a time I normally don't look at it because I think it's important to get the context here. Remember guys, Furret is a monster, and I'm not sure what Pokemon can ever beat it, but if you look at the split through Johto, there's only one single red split for Ampharos, and that's because of the different order. But right now we're clapping Furret for most of this game, and it bulged up to a 7 minute and 49 second lead after Jasmine, and I would recommend, hey, if you've never seen that Furret video, go back and watch it. It didn't do too good. But Furret's strength, like I've already said, is the end game. It has the perfect learn set, doesn't need candies and Kanto at all, and it just put on a clinic after this part of the game. And I think what's telling to me is that with this extra training that Ampharos needed to get through this section of the game smooth, it pretty much poured the entirety of its lead down the drain, and going into the start of the Elite Four, we're now down 28 seconds, and I cannot stress enough guys, Furret is dominant. It's not great, it's a slow starter, but once it gets to that end game, there's no catching it, so if you're not ahead now, you're probably not going to catch it. But enough of that, I think it's finally time to dive into the Elite Four. A lot of these battles are going to be cliff notes just due to the extra levels required for later, but Will was already a very easy battle. I already had super effective damage on every Pokemon, and the ranges just got better. It's a one-shot sweep, and it's pretty much the start that you want to see when you go into the Elite Four. Koga's essentially the same with one caveat. Fire Punch is really great for most of his team. It lets you cruise, but Muck can survive a Thunder Punch. He could just be up to those old Muck shenanigans. You know what I'm talking about. Crobat also outspeeds you, but I never really had a problem with this one at all. Even at lower levels, not that bad. But now let's cut the battle music, and I gotta talk about something real quick. We have a problem. Now for one reason or another, I don't know, Bruno was an absolute nightmare for this run. I usually came here around level 50 without optional battles, and here's how it always works out. You get chipped down, and the result of the battle is always, if Machamp hits a cross chop, crit or not, it will knock you out, and you will die most of the time you try to fight him at level 50. I tried using a simple berry, and I even floated the idea of trading an Abra for Machop and Goldenrod because it has a golden berry. You never see those in these playthroughs. I tried using candies here, but the result was that made me have a worse red fight. So here's the final strat. Get a couple of levels, buy some proteins, use Return and the pink bow. In this way, it means the Machamp has to crit you, which means you have a 75% chance to win, and that feels much better than resetting here all the time. Hitting level 53 for Karen is pretty great too, although I didn't really go for that. It does put the Umbreon into a 2-shot range, but unfortunately I get hit with a sand attack. And the great thing that I mention all the time is that after Gen 1, the debuff modifier for sand attack only drops me to 75% accuracy as opposed to 66%. Now you'll see here I don't miss my moves, which doesn't let Curse start to tick into dangerous ranges. I'm able to survive and we're able to get by. At this point, Lance is a formality. I got heavy electric damage for things like Gyarados, Aerodactyl, Charizard, and the ice coverage for the 3 Dragonites. It makes this one extremely fast, it's really consistent, and essentially it's just an early coronation for our Johto crown. Amphi finishes the Elite Four with a 2-hour, 44-minute, and 23-second time, and that's pretty impressive, but there are a few Pokemon that have had better times, but let's kind of withhold judgment for now. We need to see how this thing does in Kanto to see if we have some little tricks up our old electric sleeves. Like I've said before, Kanto, it's never the most interesting part. It's really easy, but Ampharos does have to pick its battles wisely to get the best time. And remember, it doesn't really matter the order that you battle things, it just matters how efficiently you unlock the towns. Now notice here I'm actually going to skip Surge, and my route here is to get some really easy experience from Erica, and on Sabrina here's a very important part that makes the run work. You naturally learn Thunder at level 57, and I'm going to replace Fire Punch for now. Now this saves me a trip back to the game corner to purchase a bunch of coins later, makes things a lot faster, and even though I pretty much only used Return for Bruno, Return is just really good to have during this section because it's just a default move that'll just crush most little easy battles at least. Now from there I do the Power Plant quest, I do Nugget Bridge, that leads into a very easy Misty battle, and at this point I've already gotten enough extra levels just to breeze through the rest of Kanto. When it finally comes to the blue split, Ampharos is sadly about 4 minutes behind Furret's incredible Kanto split, so at best Ampharos is kind of fighting for a top 3 spot. It's not really bad, but I think we need to talk about red preparation. I begin immediately after blue, overhauling my entire learn set. I'm going to learn Dynamic Punch, Rain Dance, Fire Punch, and I'm replacing every move I have except for Thunder, and this is what I'm going to be rocking with today. And I have to say real quick how excited I was to actually get a viable Rain Dance set to actually work, but there's still one more thing left to do. I haven't used a single rare candy in this entire run, so I saved up all 10. I need them right now. I'm going to hit level 73 because this is the level where all the damage ranges and all those vitamins come together to make everything work consistently enough for a solid time. And I also think it's really cool that I didn't pick up leftovers. I don't have to use it. I'm going to keep the magnet on for this one, but that's where Ampharos is at right now. The final time is already past Furret and Feraligatr, but we can still finish this run strong, and we got one last battle to go. First up is Pikachu, and there are some problems, but first I would like to bring up a screenshot that I was using for some practice runs and go over some things that I've been working on and coding. Shout out to Austin once again for helping me find certain values in the RAM, but let me point to a change that will just help the red fight out a lot going forward. It's really simple. Weather is on the top left, it's sunny here as you can see. On the bottom left next to my sprite, and on the top left next to the enemy stats are the reflect and light screen counters. Light screen is purple, reflect is blue, and these were really needed for me to keep better track of the red fight when it's going really fast. But enough of that, let's go back to the battle. So there are some things that can go wrong here. Getting paralyzed is number one, it's the worst, but Charm hurts really bad, and of course I'm gonna get Charmed here. Now here I set up Rain Dance, and at level 73 with the magnet, with those calciums, Thunder is like a 79% one shot on Pikachu. I get it here, we can just take it down. I am Charmed though. Next up is Espeon, of course it outspeeds us, and it's going to set up Reflect. That's not really great, not what I want to see, but Thunder is such a beastly move on Ampharos that I just have a 62% chance to one-shot Espeon, and once again, it just works out. We're moving on that quickly. Now comes in the Snorlax, and I need to do a quick little freeze frame. Here's the idea of this whole learn set. Thunder has about a 2/3 chance of a 2-shot, but usually Snorlax is going to set up Amnesia. So the idea is Thunder turn 1, get it down as low as I can, and after it sets up Amnesia, I Dynamic Punch for that 50-50 shot to get rid of it without taking any damage. But there are two things that are very wrong here. Number one, I'm Charmed, which essentially halves my damage, and Reflect is up, meaning that I'm only doing like a quarter of the damage I should be doing. But sometimes, guys, a little bit of luck can just go a long way. And I guess I need to stress here real quick that Thunder cannot miss when Rain Dance is up. That's why it's so strong. It's literally like Swift, it cannot miss. I probably should reflect that on the overlay, but I didn't think of it till now. I hit Thunder here. I do about half of its health. Snorlax decides to go for a body slam. It's rare, but I guess it does happen. It does decent damage, but what this means is that those massive debuffs on my physical damage don't even matter. And I hit the range on a follow-up Thunder, and I'm looking good right here. Now in the Venusaur, I make a very slight mistake. First off, I have 149 speed, which means I have 1 point ahead. I'll go first against the Fat Frog. Fire Punch immediately as the rain runs out is really good. It's going to set up Sunny Day, meaning that it's going to go for a Solar Beam more than likely. Me setting up Rain Dance essentially steals a turn from Venusaur, and I should just go for Thunder here to finish it off, but I go for a 50% less effective Fire Punch since it's raining. It just wastes 1 turn, but I'm going to call myself out regardless. But at this point, you're pretty much money. This fight's over. Charizard is faster, normally pretty threatening, but with the rain up, fire damage just kind of tickles us, and I have a Thunder ready to go. And at the end, I do outspeed Blastoise. I have the rain still up, Thunder swishing in the sky, and it's going to bring this run to an explosive finish. Ampharos finishes the run with a final time of 3 hours, 36 minutes, and 57 seconds, and this was a really solid run. Now, unfortunately, it's not good enough to be a top 3 run, but honestly, I didn't even think the Pokemon was this good. It took me a long time to get a route that really works for me, but at the end of the day, I think 4th place is really solid. Now, if you want to know, if anybody's curious, my previous route that I worked on for a few runs, I didn't grind, I used rare candies to get past the Bruno situation. I fought Red at like level 71 with a standard like Thunderbolt, Fire Punch, Dynamic Punch, Light Screen, Learn Set. And I would say this made Snorlax an absolute nightmare where I had to reset instantly if I got charmed or if Reflect got put up. And even then, if you got really lucky on those first 2 Pokemon, you had to rely on multiple 50-50 flips of the coin just to get rid of the Snorlax. I think that route might have the potential to be faster if it was like a tool-assisted speed run, but I think the potential to reset on Red like 15 plus times just trying to get that required result, it just didn't feel that great, so I didn't go with it. But it felt pretty good to be back in Crystal. I almost skipped this video and just went back to just the Pokemon Red run or whatever because you guys didn't seem to be too interested last time, but just like always, I like to give things their fair shot. I like to try again, so if you made it this far, you already know you're a real one. I appreciate it, and special shout out to my channel members and Patreons. The help really does go a long way, and it means a lot to me. But next time, I think it's going to be back to Pokemon Emerald, and I guess I'll see you guys then. Bye.